Now, if I had a dollar for every time I said that 2016 has just been fantastic for music, I could probably retire 3 times over and then some. I mean, this year has just been jam-packed with releases that just amazed me, as well as just surprised me as far as how good they are. Some bands dropped albums out of nowhere that surprised me that were just that good. I mean, this year has just been stupendous. I mean, I can't honestly get over that. Now, my runners up list was hard enough to do, but this list, oh man, this was almost impossible to narrow down to just 10 albums that I feel were the best and the representative of 2016 and just how good this year was. It took me a very long time to get here, so keep that in mind. There's no order to the ranking in here. Number 1 isn't necessarily better than number 10, anything like that. But here we go. Here are the top 10 albums of 2016.
Number 10.
Number 10 is Say Anything's I Don't Think It Is. Now, this album came out of nowhere earlier this year. I mean, I was expecting it maybe a summer release, maybe late spring, early summer, but they just dropped it out of nowhere on us. And let me tell you, I was not just surprised by the release, but also by the quality of this album. It feels like Max Bemis just kind of went into a studio and just let it flow. It really feels like going back to Is a Real Boy. It has that same kind of aggression. It has that same kind of I don't care, I do it yourself kind of attitude to it. The sound itself is rough, but it's reminiscent. It kind of works with it. It doesn't sound overproduced like, for instance, the self-titled album, or even In Defense of the Genre kind of did. And even Hebrews, to a certain degree, had that over-polished sound to it. This just feels like, I mean, it feels like it, well, not rushed, but it was a surprise album, and I think for them too. It feels like they just went in, kicked it out, got the album done, and released it. And I think that works for this album. There's just the song 17 Coked Up and Speeding is probably one of my favorites on here. It's catchy. It tells his tale of him growing up through his life. It's interesting. I like it. Give a Damn, the opening track, actually is fantastic, as well as the backing chorus of a lot of the Say Anything fans on here. There's just so much going on this album. I can't get over how good it is. I mean, if you've been kind of putting off listening to these guys, I really suggest giving it a chance, because this album just blows away any expectations of what Say Anything is.
Number 9.
Number 9 is Museum Mouth with Popcorn Fish Guinea Pig. Weird title, but this album is just so good. It's a very, very indie rock album. Same thing I said about Say Anything's album as far as the sound quality applies here. It's kind of that do-it-yourself sound to it, which I really like for this album. I think it really works. You've got some really interesting things going on. The opening of the song Koopa Breeders, for instance, is a looping vocals track, which is just really weird. I like how it works out. The songs themselves are very catchy. They're dark. I like that they are kind of angry, but at the same time generally poppy as well. I had the chance to see these guys live with Say Anything actually on my birthday, which was amazing. That show was just so good. I mean, they put on such a great live performance. If you ever get a chance, definitely go see Museum Mouth. If you haven't listened to this album, it's a must. You need to check this album out.
Number 8.
Number 8 is Saosin's Along the Shadow. This is Saosin back with Anthony Green, who hasn't been in the band since, I believe, 2004, and let me tell you, it feels like he never left. I was kind of a little bit hesitant about this album, not putting on this list, but before I listened to it, because I like Circus Survive a lot, but I just felt like this was going to be just a repeat of Circa Survive. I felt like it was going to be, or even that, or it'd be Saosin with Anthony Green. This feels like Saosin. This goes back to their EPs and their unreleased songs that just are absolutely fantastic. Every track on here is solid. It also brings a sense of nostalgia. I can't explain it, but a lot of these tracks just sound like they were written back in 2004, 2003, and they just brought that here. And it's a nice style to kind of listen to again. Anthony Green's voice is phenomenal on here. I mean, it goes back and forth between the cleans and the screaming here. The actual guitar work is phenomenal. I mean, everything about this album, if you're a Saosin fan, then you're going to love it. If you've never listened to Saosin, it's a fantastic album to start with. I think it really kind of got away from the cleaner stuff that they kind of did, the more poppier things that they kind of did with Kovriber. And I think it really just brings back that aggression and that original style that I really enjoyed with Saosin.
Number 7.
Number 7 is Avenged Sevenfold, The Stage. Now, this was another surprise album. We were kind of all expecting it to come out at some point, but they just dropped it without any kind of notice or build up or singles or anything like that. All we got was the video for the title track, The Stage, which was this really weird kind of puppet show thing going on, and I kind of was immediately drawn to that, the visual style of it, but the music itself was great. This is the best we've heard them in a very long time. It feels like they have the passion back. It feels like they're not just writing it by the numbers. It feels like they're not trying to write alternative metal tracks that might get them on the radio or on Call of Duty or something like that. These are really kind of moody, atmospheric tracks that they've done. They're long tracks as well, but they don't actually outwear themselves. They don't outstay their welcome. I liked pretty much every song on here in general, some more than others. It's a lot slower than their older stuff, so it's not quite sounding like their older stuff, but just that passion and that energy is definitely back.
Number 6.
Number 6 is The Devil Wears Prada with Transit Blues. This album really took me by surprise because I love Dead Throne, but I liked the 818 album, but the last couple stuff that we've heard from them haven't really thrilled me. The Space EP was okay. It had its moments. It definitely had some style there, but it didn't really do much for me. I mean, upon first listen, I really enjoyed it. Subsequent listens, not as much. I don't not like the album or the EP. I think it's okay, but just not so much. So I really wasn't expecting a whole lot with this album. And the first track they released, Daughter, I thought was fantastic. I thought that really had that atmospheric sound that Dead Throne had, but more of that slower style that they were kind of building towards. It was more methodical style. I like that. And then they released another track and I didn't like it as much, but then the album came out and the first song just immediately takes you by surprise. And that's the whole album in a nutshell. It's just a wonderful surprise. I think they did an excellent job with this, recapturing what they had brought to the table previously. And I'm definitely looking forward to see where they go from here. If you haven't checked out Transit Blues, make sure you put it on your list.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Romp with Departure from Venus. Now, unfortunately, Romp actually broke up fairly recently, so they're no longer a band, but I really feel this album is worth mentioning just because while it is technically their debut and their final album, it's just done so well. The tracks on here are very personal, very emotional, but they're also very upbeat in a lot of ways. There's just so much energy going on a lot of these tracks that I really kind of enjoyed this all throughout. I mean, my original review up where I praised it, they brought just so much to the table here. There's a lot going on. I mean, the indie rock, there's surf rock, there's punk music going on there. They just bring a lot that they just brought to the table and just packaged it in such a unique way. It's unfortunate, again, that they're no longer a band, but I really think Departure from Venus was a fantastic release for 2016.
Number 4.
Number 4 is Thrice with To Be Everywhere is To Be Nowhere. This album, again, Thrice is not a band I really listen to. I mean, they were always something that I knew about. I always kind of checked them out, but I was never really interested that much in any of their albums. They have some fantastic songs out there that I've enjoyed, but they just didn't do it for me. This album, I mean, perfect. This is probably the only album I've ever considered as close to perfect as you can get from start to finish. It comes to as close to perfect as you can get. All of these songs are just brutally emotional and powerful. I mean, they just did such a great job with this. From the opening track where he starts screaming out, there's just so much I love about this album that honestly, if I had to rank albums, this would be probably right where it is with this list. I mean, I think calling it number 4 is perfect for where it is, especially considering the strength of all these other albums. Again, this album just does so much and does so much well.
Number 3.
Number 3 is Norma Jean's Polar Similar. Now, Norma Jean's Wrongdoers was one of my favorite albums by them because it just blended their older style of that kind of mathcore with their newer, more progressive metal, post-metal, whatever you want to call it, sound, a la the Deftones. And it just did a great job, and it was essentially a brand new band at that point because there's only one remaining member. With Polar Similar, it is a completely new band. There are no original members. This is the second album that we get from majority of the members from Wrongdoers, and they stepped it up here. I mean, they brought it up to 11. This is probably the heaviest Norma Jean album. It's probably also the angriest Norma Jean album. It is very dark. It deals with some extremely deep subject matter on here. It is not for light listening, but just overall, they just did such a great job, and everybody brought something here. And that's the thing, is you can kind of hear that everybody in the band is bringing something to the band, and that's something I think they really did well with here. It also does kind of combine some of their styles, but I think they've moved past that, trying to kind of introduce people to Norma Jean. I would consider Wrongdoers an introduction to Norma Jean. This is Norma Jean. This is what they are. This is what they do. Polar Similar was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Number 2.
Number 2 is Dance Gavin Dance, Mothership. This would be the second time in a row that Dance Gavin Dance has ended up on one of my Album of the Years list. Their last album ended up on there. This album, Mothership, is even better than that. They've stepped everything up. I mean, the last one I really feel like they were kind of expanding themselves a little bit more. I feel especially Tillian Pearson was kind of expanding his voice. He wasn't trying to be so clean as he was on their other albums that he had worked on. And I think he expands it even more here to the point where he's kind of stands by himself. I really think, as good as John Mess does, especially in this album, I mean, his vocal work, John Mess screaming can be a little bit harsh at times. I think he does excellent on this album, but I think Tillian Pearson kind of just steals the show here. I think he could be a one-man show with his vocal work. It just works that well. And of course you have Will Swan's fantastic guitar work, which just ranges the gamut of genres that they've just brought into everything. Also want to address that, yes, I know I made a few mistakes in my review of that album. Their last album was Instant Gratification, not Acceptance Speech. I know that, as well as the fact that I said sounded like he said Cocaine Christmas and it's Cocaine Cringe Fest. I understand that. I know I made that mistake. Please forgive me, internet. That said, I still stand by my review itself. That song, that line, even Cocaine Cringe Fest, just is so weird and kind of juvenile in a lot of ways, but that song just works so well. I think it's probably one of my favorite songs off there. It's just very kind of fun to listen to. And that's kind of the band in general. Is Dance Gavin Dance are just a band that really just have fun with the music. They don't really take post-hardcore that seriously, and it works for them because they're extremely talented and it doesn't come off as cheap or cheesy.
Number 1.
Number 1 is Every Time I Die, Low Teens. Now, I know I said that there's no real order to the ranking here. This is number 1. This is my favorite album, 2016. I feel like this is the best album of 2016. Admittedly, when I first listened to this, and I'm thinking it's because of where I was when I did, I wasn't that into it. I actually kind of had to listen to it again a few times before I really kind of just clicked with me. I mean, that said, the first time I listened to it, it was popped up on sleeping pills and it was like 5 a.m. But oh my God, this album is just so good. It has some of the best songs that they've ever written. The last song, Map Change, for instance, is really just where I feel the band kind of all brought something. They wrote it not just together as a band, but I think separately themselves. They all brought their strength to the table. Daniel Davison, if you were worried about how the new drumming would sound, just fits right in. The production on the drumming is a little okay. There's a little bit of issues there, but that doesn't matter. His drumming is just frantic and all over the place and heavy. There's so many little moments where other drummers might have not done something, and he just brings something to the table there. I enjoy that. I mean, C++ Love Will Get You Killed is probably is actually my favorite track off of this album. I've kind of come to that conclusion. As much as I like everything else on here, that has to be my favorite just because of the way it flows and everything. I mean, there's so much going. Glitches, so heavy, such a good song on here. Pedal, another one, absolutely frantically heavy. I love this. Low Teens is it my favorite Every Time I Die album? That may be debatable at this point. It's definitely up there. Is it my favorite album 2016? Absolutely. If you don't believe me, I've listened to this album over 100 times at this point, and that should say something, because I'm really kind of selective with my music listening, especially trying to listen to a lot of music to get reviews and stuff like that. To listen to a single album over 100 times, and we're talking about an album that just came out only a few months ago, that should say something, and that really should say all you need to know about Low Teens. Thank you so much for watching my top 10 albums of 2016. What did you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments. What are your top 10 albums for this year? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Do you hate me? Whatever, let it down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more.